What's going on, everybody? This is Billy Truelove with Podcast 1558. I got a very special guest with me today from Ingraven Vids on Twitter, YouTube, Patreon. This is our guest, Ingraven. How you doing? Thanks for taking the time with us today. What we want to do is break down um, this week's game against the Baltimore Ravens. We are the Kansas City Chiefs traveling to Baltimore for Sunday Night Football.
Mm-hmm.
Both teams coming off of a stressful Week 1 game. We won't dwell in the past for the Ravens. I know I'm speaking for every Chiefs fan in existence. We know the Ravens are a better team than the Raiders are. Things did not go your way last night. I think you just got the Raiders' absolute best shot, and you guys
Mm-hmm.
are falling apart health-wise right
Yeah.
now. And some of that you think, I personally, when it was J.K. Dobbins
Mm-hmm.
and then it was even Gus Edwards, I just thought, Lamar's got it. Lamar's got this under control. You can put anyone you want back there. This team knows how to run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tyson Williams looked good. Do you think he is the answer? You've got a plethora of running backs just out of nowhere now. You got Le'Veon
Yeah.
Bell, you got Latavius Murray, but is Williams the guy that you think can get it done for you going into week 2 and maybe the rest of the season?
Yeah. Yes and no. As a runner, yes, for sure. He looked explosive. He looked sure of himself running the football. He made good decisions. But as in pass protection, he struggled. He struggled, and that sort of came out of nowhere because he looked good as a pass protector in the preseason. Now, granted, he was going against backups when he played in the preseason, but at the same time, he was also playing with backups too. But anyway, he as a runner, he looked a lot better than Latavius Murray did last night. And granted, both of them scored touchdowns, but he just looked the part. When Latavius Murray came in and when he would run the ball, things slowed down quite a bit. With Le'Veon Bell, he didn't play yet. We still have Devontae Freeman on the practice squad too. He also didn't play yet. So we got to see when those guys are going to get their call up. But for right now, it's the Tyson Williams show. But one thing that I'm a little bit worried about with that is the Ravens, because they don't usually like giving the bulk of the workload to the younger player. If they have a veteran at a position, then they usually like giving it to the veteran, I guess, to sort of play it safe. And with last night, Tyson Williams got 9 carries, but Latavius Murray, and Tyson Williams, this is his second year with the team. Last year, he was on the practice squad. But Latavius Murray, who literally just got signed this week, he had 10 carries. So you sort of question why they did that, but it almost looks as if they want to go with Latavius Murray more. Now he was a better pass protector, so that could give him just a little nudge on Tyson Williams, but we'll see how it works out starting this week against the Chiefs.
Absolutely, especially if your line is having problems going into a game where historically we've seen Lamar have to throw the ball more than I would imagine you want him to when they have squared off with the Chiefs. And we know the recipe to beat Baltimore is to make Lamar drop back and pass that ball as often as you can, because he is most deadly on his feet. At least that's from the outside looking in. That's what I believe the general consensus is. If you're going to beat the Ravens and Lamar, you can't let Lamar do what he does best, because it is just too hard to stop when he can get rolling on the ground. And we want him throwing those balls, wherever, especially to Sammy Watkins. The Chiefs fans, they're going to love to see him on the field. I'm sure he'll have a decent night. As long as he can stay healthy through the entire game, which I think he will. That's just me kidding around. I think he will be a solid. You'll get 6 or 7 games out of him, or maybe this is just the year for him. But yeah, we definitely want to see Lamar throwing the ball as much as possible, and I think the Chiefs have figured out a way to make that happen. Now, that doesn't guarantee anything. Are you confident in Lamar's progression that he's getting to a place where he can start to beat teams with his arm. You guys have a talented wide receiver room, young wide receiver room.
Right.
Sammy brings some age there. Mark Andrews is, he's not an old guy by any means, but sort of a vet on the team now. Are you getting comfortable with Lamar being able to beat somebody with his arm?
I think so. And last night told a lot of that story. Because Lamar, he was hard. I mean, he had to run for his life because the offensive line wasn't blocking. But he was doing his thing through the air, and he looked just fine. And where he looked the best at was when he had time. But he didn't have too much time throughout the game. But he still, passing wise, he did a pretty good job last night. He made it happen. But one thing that I always consider, I know you mentioned how the Chiefs, they sort of have the blueprint on how to stop Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I think it's also it's a game within the game, because I think it's actually almost bigger than just Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes, or Patrick Mahomes versus Ravens defense, Lamar versus Chiefs defense, because I think it's almost one of those things where it's like the teacher, he knows better than the student, and with the student, he tries all these different ways to try to beat the teacher, but it just ends up failing every time. And what I mean when I say that is with Andy Reid and John Harbaugh, because we know that John Harbaugh came from Andy Reid's coaching tree over there with the Philadelphia Eagles. And one thing that we've seen as Ravens fans, especially the last two times for sure. The first time, it wasn't this, but the last two times, without a doubt, whenever the Ravens play the Chiefs, whatever they do, whatever the Ravens do, good, whatever they do normally, they throw it all out the window. Because it seems as if this game is always a prove it game, coaching wise. And obviously Harbaugh and the Ravens have failed, but they don't play their normal type of ball game when they play the Chiefs. So hopefully next week, or this week actually, hopefully they do it the right way and play their own style of football.
Yeah, we definitely don't have the coaching edge over the opponent this week like we can in a lot of games. I think Harbaugh is one of the premier coaches in the league. Obviously, Andy is as well. And like you said, he's got a huge coaching tree. That will be a chess match. And it is something that we tend to see when we're getting ready for these games. We're saying this is what this team does best. And if it is run the ball, the Chiefs can make teams panic. When they score, they show you that they can score very fast. And I really thought that the Browns this past week, obviously, they took control early and showed that they were going to be as aggressive as they could and not get conservative, going forward on fourth multiple times in the first half, going for a 2-point conversion after a penalty, take advantage of the penalties the Chiefs make, because the Chiefs did not look good. The Browns played about as perfect as a game as you could, and we showed it takes just a couple of mistakes. Turning that ball over to us is you can't lose the turnover battle against the Chiefs and win often. Now, Lamar did put the ball on the ground last night. He took a couple of real big shots. This is something everyone's been watching. He is in deep contract waters right now. When you see him getting dumped on his head in some of these situations where he's trying to get every inch he can, what is Baltimore's plan here with finding? I mean, they're going to have to find the middle ground. The money he's going to want can't possibly be the money he's going to get when the odds of him being injured just seem so much higher than your typical pocket quarterback, because no one runs like Lamar, because no one can run like Lamar. There isn't another quarterback as electric with his feet as Lamar is. How worried do you get when you see plays like that? Like, I think you know what the one I'm talking about specifically, about around the middle of the field. He's trying to get what he can, and he really lands on top of his head there, getting folded up once. What goes through your mind as a Ravens fan when you're seeing your absolute superstar getting hit like that.
Well, I mean, the thing with Lamar is that if he does take a hit, it doesn't hardly ever happen. While Lamar he does run a lot, especially for a quarterback, because that is one of his specialties. He doesn't take many hits, and that's a beautiful thing about it. Because I know a lot of times if you just look at a stat sheet and you see all of Lamar's runs, you see all of his yards, you could think, oh man, this guy, he's probably putting himself in so much danger. He's probably getting whacked all the time, but he actually does a great job of protecting himself. Now, when you brought up them being in the contract talks with Lamar Jackson, we know he's certainly going to get paid. He's going to break the bank. He's going to get a record-breaking deal whenever that time comes. And I know a lot of people have questioned, oh, should the Ravens pay Lamar? How much should the Ravens pay Lamar? Will the Ravens pay Lamar? And the Ravens, they have to pay Lamar. One of the reasons why, because you know what life is like without Lamar. And that's it. Yeah, Lamar is literally the team. No Lamar, then yeah, things would be looking really rough. But Lamar Jackson, as soon as he came onto the team, as soon as he got inserted in the starting lineup, the whole vibe changed. The whole Ravens atmosphere literally just changed, and it was a changing of the guards to go from one extreme to another, to go from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson. That was just a huge change. They are two completely different types of quarterbacks. They have two completely different styles. And they're just different. It was a seismic shift. But Lamar, obviously in the playoffs, we got to work on some things. But as far as regular season and putting us in position to get to the playoffs, he's had nothing but success. He's had nothing but success since he's been in the league. And hopefully he can finally have some success against Patrick Mahomes and those Chiefs. But besides that, they've had a lot of success. So the Ravens, they're definitely going to take care of Lamar because they have to, because he is their team.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Without Lamar on that team, it is not nearly as competitive as it is right now. He is such a hard player to defend. Well, so like you said, as far as winning this week, you had mentioned, the team has to stick to its guns, and you can't panic and you can't overreact if the Chiefs get on the board first or they do something big. You can't panic, and you got to keep running the ball, and you guys are certainly able to do that. So I think what Chiefs fans want to know, we've seen it now in the Super Bowl, and we've seen it against Cleveland. If you can rush 4 passers on this team and drop 7, you are in a really good spot to kind of keep everything in front of you as far as the Chiefs are concerned. But like I've tried to say on here before, it is easier said than done to get pressure sending 4 people. There aren't a lot of teams that can do that. And I'm not sure, and I that's why I want to get your opinion, is Baltimore in a position right now where they can send 4, drop 7, and make life hell for Patrick just sending those 4 guys?
We're going to see. I think it's going to take them to find the right combination of defensive linemen and, of course, pass rushers to do that. Because what the Ravens love to do so much, Wink Martindale, their defensive coordinator, he loves to blitz. But the thing with that, he lives by the blitz, but he can also die by the blitz. And from recently playing Patrick Mahomes, the Ravens, they have died big time by the blitz. So we'll see. That's one thing that I'm really going to be watching for this game, especially, is if the Ravens make the proper adjustments, especially on defense, because Patrick Mahomes has burned them time and time again. And just like you mentioned, a lot of teams, when Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense, when they burn them, they can start to panic. And if they start to panic, it's never a good thing. It shows with the team's play calling, if they're panicking or not. Because the Chiefs, they can score in a second. They can flip the field in a second. Tyreek Hill, that dude is just, he's crazy, man. It's just crazy. It's like it's not fair, man, because it seems like when I watch Tyreek Hill, it seems like he's just like toying around. with people on the field. And what did he have? Almost like 200 yards last week.
Yeah. Yep.
But he
Yes, they
like
did.
whenever he catches the ball, if it's not a contested catch, if he catches the ball and has space, what I notice about him, because he's always trying to make a big play, because he'll catch the ball and then he'll back up a little bit. And then he'll try to make a move and then get some more yards. And he can afford to back up a little bit because he knows how fast he is. And he knows, like, really it's nobody that's messing with his speed. So he can afford to back up a little bit because he'll make up for it. So he's dangerous, man. He is so dangerous. And us as Ravens fans, we got plenty of experience with the dangers of Tyreek Hill. So it's gonna be something just to see how the Ravens defense tries to stop and contain Patrick Mahomes. And if they do try with a four-man rush, it's just going to be temporary. They're not going to stick with a four-man rush because they, like I said, Wink, their defensive coordinator, live by, die by. But it's going to be really interesting to see how they counter if the Chiefs, like you mentioned, if the Chiefs score first or whatnot, if they get a big play. It's going to be interesting to see how the Ravens offense tries to counter that, and if they go into panic mode or they still stay relaxed.
Yeah, and something that I'm sure, Ravens fans aren't just keeping tabs on the Chiefs. What's happening in Kansas City right now, which is going to be what we watch week in and out, is this, as everyone saw in the Super Bowl, our offensive line stayed in Kansas City that night. Most of it was hurt, and the guys that were there weren't good. From left to right, it is all new. It is all new from left tackle to right tackle this year, 3 of which are first-year starters. 2 of them are rookies, 1 of which are right tackle Lucas Niang. We had drafted last year. He opted out, and he's getting, as of right now, the start. Mike Rimmers might get the start against Baltimore. Then we've got an old Baltimore friend of ours now on the left-hand side. And this was a humongous story in Kansas City in the offseason. We made the trade for Orlando Brown Jr. The first thing that everyone said is, what is Baltimore up to, sending this guy to the team that you can't seem to get past? You've got blood in the water with Kansas City, and you're giving them the first aid kit. And a second-round pick. That really blew my mind, that with a team that needed a player like Brown as badly as we did, that we were able to pull a second-round pick in that deal as well. We have no leverage in this conversation, it seems like. But, whatever. Who knows how those conversations really go in the back office. But if any Ravens fans didn't see that performance from Orlando Brown Jr. this past Sunday, it was horrible. He did not look good. He had Myles Garrett in front of him. He's got a new dude next to him that he's never played next to. So I get this is going to take time. But Ravens fans, watch that offensive line for Kansas City Sunday night. It is trying to find its bearings. And I think this could very well take 6, 7, 8 weeks, really, for them to just find some continuity with one another. Because Patrick was running for his life most of the day Sunday. So you might be able to actually get by with 4. And I like the secondary. I just like how that secondary is coached and plays in Baltimore. If you can send 4 and get to Patrick, we will have another long night on our hands. But I don't know. How did you feel with the Orlando Brown Jr. Trade to? I know we're not in a division with one another, but we are always looking for Baltimore. We know we're going to have to deal with you guys. You guys are going to have to deal with us. And I didn't see such an important piece getting sent to us. How did Baltimore feel about that?
With that trade, I didn't even want us to trade Orlando Brown Jr. I know he had talked about that he's a left tackle, and when he said that, I know he was thinking the business side. He wanted to make some money because left tackles get paid more than right tackles usually. And I had no problem with that. NFL, it stands for not for long. So, hey, do you want to go out there and try to make as much money as you can? Go do your thing, no problem. But when they traded him to the Chiefs, I was just like, oh wow, they really traded him to the Chiefs out of all people. So I figured that the Chiefs must have given the Ravens the best offer that they could have possibly gotten. I would have much rather they kept Orlando Brown Jr. He played out his contract, and worst case scenario, he leaves and you get a comp pick, or you franchise tag him and you do the transitional tag to where you trade him for a couple of first round picks or whatever it may be. But when they traded him to the Chiefs, I was like, oh, okay. Now, with Orlando Brown Jr. struggling a bit the other night versus the Browns. Now it was against Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, so that's a real tough task. Especially Myles Garrett, one of the best defensive ends in the league. So a lot of people will struggle with him. But one thing with Orlando Brown Jr., he struggles with speed. He struggles with the speed rushers. If they get underneath him, then it is probably going to be a wrap. But he's going to literally an exact opposite offense from where he was at with the Ravens. You know, Ravens, they run the ball first down, second down, they run the ball third down. If there was a fifth down, they would run the ball on fifth down too. That helps offensive linemen. That helps them look even better. But he goes from a running offense to where the script is completely flipped to a passing offense, and a pass-heavy offense. So that, as in a passing offense, that really gets to show, like, okay, what your offensive line is really made of. So with Orlando Brown Jr., it's going to take some time. It's going to take some adjusting. I think he'll be fine in the long run. I wouldn't worry about him in the long run. But that's why you got coaches in place, offensive line coaches. And they gave up that first round pick, and they did get some nice stuff in it. It was like it's like sort of like a win-win for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a win-win. So you get a young guy in Orlando Brown Jr. He goes to a winning team. Let's see if he gets his contract. I think he'll get his contract because Chiefs, I don't know how y'all do it, but you find a way how to literally pay everybody.
Yeah,
pay
the salary
Patrick
cap
Mahomes,
is just not real anymore.
Paid Chris Jones, paid Travis Kelce, paid Tyreek. They paid everybody, and they even tried to get Trent Williams too.
Oh my God, I know.
Man, like these guys. That's why I say that the cap is not really what we think it is. Because Chiefs, they're maneuvering and doing all this. I don't know how they do it, but I love it though. But with Orlando Brown Jr., it's just gonna take some time for him to just get fully adjusted to the Chiefs and how they do things over there.
Yeah, and you're right. Going to a polar opposite scheme, it is going to take him his time, but he does seem like he's got a good head on his shoulders. He seems like he's a good football player, and that should come around. I think the rest of this line is going to be very good, and what we had mentioned yesterday on this show is if we do run in Cleveland again, it will be in the postseason, obviously, and it won't be, that game will not be anything like what we saw this past weekend, primarily because that offensive line should be a completely different unit as far as how they perform later on in the season. So we know that if Baltimore can find a way to rush forward, you're confident that they're still going to get an itchy trigger finger on that blitz. It does backfire frequently when blitzing Patrick. He has a great resume against the blitz, but anything can happen. I do think our offense is going to lose a step without having Sammy Watkins because he's always in the right place, and that makes everyone around out there running routes better. We don't have that anymore, so we'll see. On the defensive side of the ball, for the Chiefs, Frank Clark didn't play last week. He's a big proponent and big piece of how we stop Lamar Jackson because he can set that edge, not over pursue, and make Lamar make that move. If you go after Lamar, he's going to embarrass you.
Right.
And you have to be patient with him. Chris Jones this season making a transition from playing defensive tackle to defensive end. So he's going to be playing inside from time to time, but they're really wanting to see what they can get out of this guy. He's a humongous person, and just as big as some of these left and right tackles. And now playing on the outside, getting more one-on-one looks, it will be good, I think, throughout the season. This is the type of game, I think, where it could hurt us. I'd say keep him inside. He starts trying to run after Lamar Jackson, he will get cooked. And I just think that's the way that is. Willie Gay, talented linebacker of ours that's really supposed to take a step forward this year. We won't have him. He'll be on the
Is he
shelf
hurt?
for a couple weeks. Yes, he is on IR now, so we won't have him for a couple of weeks. Nick Bolton got his first start this past weekend and looked all right, and we should have the return of Tyrann Mathieu,
Honey Badger.
who was a big piece. I wasn't too concerned about not having him going against Baker Mayfield. They are another run-heavy team. It's like we're playing the same game again. There's two teams that know how to run the ball against a team that has struggled in stopping the run over the past few years and are now trying to make significant changes on that D-line. We brought in Jaron Reed from Seattle in the offseason, so he should be a big piece of stopping that run. But like you said, if Baltimore's going to beat us, they've got to figure out a way to do what they do without pulling the plug too soon. You got to just see where things are at in the fourth quarter. Unless you're just getting your doors blown off in the first half, then obviously you make a change. But I don't think Lamar's the kind of quarterback that's going to get you back with his arm if you're down 21. I don't know. We'll see. It's always a long game. And tell me how you felt last night when the Chiefs were playing Cleveland. Arrowhead was crazy. I thought CBS did a great job. It felt every bit like a playoff game. There was so much urgency. It seemed like at all times, every play seemed like it could be the one that does it. Did you get that feeling against the Raiders last night in Vegas?
Oh yeah, certainly, definitely. When because Ravens, they jumped out to a 14-point lead. Then at one point it was 14-3, but I usually in week one they absolutely destroy teams in week one. But when they weren't doing that, I was like, And then when the Raiders started coming back, I was like, oh boy. So that made the game being so close throughout. It just made every play, like you said, it counted that much more. There was even one point in the game, I forgot what the score was, but the Ravens were up by a touchdown, and I just said I didn't feel like the Ravens were even winning because it just felt like everything was just going in the Raiders' favor. The game was it was crazy. And seeing the Chiefs and Browns game, it was just, that same type of atmosphere. But obviously for Raiders, that was the first time that they had fans in that new stadium. So they were like extra crazy, and especially toward the end of the game, you see like the camera focusing on the field, but it keeps shaking because the place is just rocking. And just the way that overtime went and just all the craziness that happened there, I know that place was just super loud. And then it must have been even louder because it's closed in. So that noise, it doesn't go through the air, it stays inside of that dome. So man. But yeah, this week, hopefully this week, the crowd stays loud throughout because that would be indicative of it being a close game. Because if the crowd is into it, then that means that either the Ravens are winning big or it's a very, very close game. But if the crowd is quiet, then that's never a good sign for the home team.
Yeah, I do anticipate that stadium being an absolute hornet's nest when that game starts, though. And we'll just got to see what, if the nerves get to one of the teams first. I know Baltimore is going to be excited to have that crowd, and the Chiefs are going to feel that pressure. Well, then I guess the last I want to get from you, I'll just ask you three just kind of quick off the cusp questions here. One, give me your game prediction for Sunday night, Chiefs and Ravens.
I would say 31-20 Chiefs. I just for what they did last night, what they displayed last night, just the lack of adjustments. Then lack of adjustments is one thing, but then when there's a lack of effort, that can be another thing. One of the things that absolutely just destroyed me last night wasn't even the loss itself, wasn't even the way that the game went down itself. Well, some parts like letting Darren Waller just have his way. And again, lack of adjustments with that because I really thought they were going to do better with Darren Waller, but they just throughout the entire game, they just went off. They just kept, he was wide open, making all these plays, and they didn't take him out. But Marlon Humphrey on the very last play of the game, that killed me because he just stopped running. Zay Jones, Marlon Humphrey, he got chipped by his own player. I think it was by a safety. So that allows Zay Jones to have even more separation. But so Derek caught through the pass, perfect catch and everything. Marlon Humphrey just stopped. He just stopped running. And I was just like, wow, like what is that? Why is that?
Yeah.
Because anything could have happened. Zay Jones could have dropped the ball. He could have bobbled it, and Marlon Humphrey could have tackled him or something. Anything could happen. You don't give up on a play like that. But it was just frustrating to see that because we're not used to that, especially from $100 million cornerback, Marlon Humphrey.
Yes.
So I just with this game, and then knowing how the Ravens have operated when it's come to the Chiefs, like I said earlier, they tend to go away from what they normally do. Sometimes I do think that John Harbaugh may be a little bit intimidated by Andy Reid. And he plays just to where he has to prove like, hey, I got this. Hey, Andy Reid, I can do this. And you don't have anything to prove to Andy Reid. Yeah. You just got to go out there and play the game. You won a Super Bowl before Andy Reid.
Before Reid did.
So it's like there's nothing to prove. Just be yourself. Play your own style of football. Play your game. But I just with that and with the status of the offensive line, just how they were last night against the Raiders, against Crosby, and against Yannick Ngakoue. I was thinking about Chris Jones, man. And a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, when it was looking like he was going to be a free agent. He was somebody that I really wanted Ravens to sign bad. But I think the Kansas City Chiefs, they ended up franchise tagging him. And then the same year they franchise tagged him, they ended up signing him to a deal before the deadline passed. So they kept him around, but I was like, it's all good. We probably wouldn't have got him anyway. But that offensive line is going to have some problems. But on defense, just speaking about Darren Waller, if it's one of those things where like, all right, we knew Darren Waller's a problem. We know how good he is. I mean, he used to be a Raven. They were the ones that transitioned him to tight end in the first place because we drafted him as a receiver. But so we got firsthand experience with Darren Waller and know how great he's become as a tight end, one of the top tight ends in the league. I say he's number 3 because it's like between Kels, Kittle, and then at number 3 is Darren Waller. So you're aware of what he can do and the impact that he can have on a game. In the first half of last night's game, I was like, all right, cool. Darren Waller, he did his thing. But all right, second half adjustments. The Ravens are going to adjust. Ravens are going to find a way to take Darren Waller out the game because he's been the main person on Raiders offense that has been destroying them, but they didn't. They didn't. And now you're going up against Travis Kelce. So with going against him, it's like, come on. Like, it's like we almost expect even worse than that. And then, of course, Tyreek Hill, and they just always a big play away. But a big play for them can happen just like that. Because the Chiefs, that's just what they do. I think they must practice all those big plays in practice.
I think they absolutely do.
They have to because they do it so much, man. They do it all I remember in that when they were playing the Texans or the Titans? Maybe it was both because I think they actually had to come back in both games in the playoffs that year.
Yes, we did.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, it was both. When they were down. And I'm just thinking like, no, I ain't going for this. Dude, Texans and then Titans, nah, not going for this. And then they came back. They came back both times. And then even in the Super Bowl, they were down in the Super Bowl too. Yeah. So when Chiefs are down, I'm not buying it. So even if the Ravens, they jump out to a big lead, I hope they do, but I'm still not going to be comfortable. I'm not going to be lax, anything like that, because you just know what the Chiefs are capable of. So, yeah, right now I'm saying 31-20. I hope to be wrong. I would love to be wrong and love to see a Ravens win. But right now, just being realistic, I love the Ravens. I hope they win. I want them to win every single game. But just for being realistic about it, I just don't see it this week.
Yeah, and like you said with those comebacks, what I don't think a lot of people paid attention to, some of the greatness from Tom Brady in that Super Bowl, was the beginning of the second half. The second that second half started, he was letting the clock run let that play clock run down to zeros every snap. Usually you see that at the end of a game. You're in that 2-minute drill. You're trying to run clock. Tom Brady started taking clock from us the second that second half began.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
This is, I mean, Tom is the man. I'm not gonna fight that. It is what it is. But yeah, you're right. If you get out ahead, I think teams got to just not be afraid to do certain things like the Browns weren't, but you got to also not be afraid to burn that clock up right when the game starts. You can start taking it from them. Well, then let me also get your way too early Super Bowl prediction.
Oh boy. Wow, that's a good one. I don't want to see a rematch. I don't want to see a rematch from last year.
I don't think I want to either.
It is way too early. Right now, oh wow. Maybe Chiefs and Packers. Maybe Aaron Rodgers really tries to go out on his last ride the right way. Maybe they finally get over that hump of the NFC Championship game. Because they keep getting there, but they don't end up finishing this. It sort of reminds me of Andy Reid back in the day with the Eagles with Donovan McNabb. They were NFC Championship, but they wouldn't get over the hump. Then they finally did. But then Tom Brady, how the story went.
Damn.
So So I'll go Chiefs.
So maybe Chiefs Packers. We'll see. That would be good. And then to finish us off here, give me the greatest Baltimore Raven of all time.
Oh, Ed Reed.
Ed Reed. Okay, I was thinking. I know when I ask him this, I think he might say Ray Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, you can go either one, but I would say Ed Reed. Well, when you say Baltimore Raven, like as far as greatest Ravens player or just greatest Ravens of all, if it's greatest Raven, just straight up Raven, not including player and just impact on the team, period, I would say Ray Lewis. But if we talking greatest Raven player, I would say Ed Reed. But it's like 1 and 1.00001. They're like super close with each other, man.
Yeah, it's crazy to imagine two players as great as those two guys are played on the same damn team.
Yeah,
which is just crazy.
It's wild, man. And they played at the same time, and then speaking of another Chief, Terrell Suggs, he played with them too, and it was just it was nice.
Got him a ring real quick.
Yeah. So, this guy, man, he won Super Bowls with both the Ravens and the Chiefs.
Yep.
So got his participation award in Kansas City though, but it's all good.
Yeah, man. That's about all he did too. Oh my goodness!
Wow, man.
Well, Ink Raven, thank you for the time again. I really hope we can revisit this later in the season, in the postseason. I'm confident the Ravens are going to be around. They're one of those teams that just don't lose very many regular season games, and injuries will get figured out. Every team's going to get better, unless peaking right now, like Cleveland sort of looked like they could be. We'll see what happens. But like I said, actually, before I end this out, Ingraven Vids, that's on Twitter, that's on YouTube, that's on Patreon. Just go find it. It is an awesome, awesome cast that he puts out there, especially on his live feed. When you're watching this game Sunday night, throw on his live feed for this game. It is awesome. You'll be able to sit there, and you can say whatever you want to this Ravens fan, and he can't hear you. So, go check it out. It is awesome. Again, I'm Billy Trullo at Podcast 1558. We are out, and go Chiefs.